Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder, to some first impressions on the IJN Kurama, which is the lead ship of its own class in its 1920 configuration. It is a Japanese quote-unquote battle cruiser, effectively it's a pre-dreadnought, of rank 5, battle rating 6.0, and it is the current naval prize of the ongoing event called Tokushi Heiki. So if the sound is different and also the footage quality is a bit lower than usual, that's because I'm back on my old PC. Not because the new PC has any problems, but because I'm in a different location and I try to get some videos out from there. That has to do with some IRL stuff, I'm not getting into it, and we go right into the IJN Kurama. And the TLDR of the ship is, don't bother, it's not worth it. Not that the ship is extremely terrible, it has some things going for it, but it's not really, in comparison to the other rewards, something that I would go after if you would ask me, because you have to decide for one of the big 3 prizes. I think that this ship has a little bit of the flavor of the IJN Kurama, which has the advantage of being at 5.7, and also the IJN Setsu, when we want to compare it to the Japanese tech tree alone, at 6.3 in the tech tree, but the IJN Setsu just is significantly better suited to fight at 6.3 including up tiers than the IJN Kurama is at 6.0. I had a really hard time and I invested a lot of playtime into it to get any sort of decent footage, and the battle that you see right now is the very best battle that I had in 2 days or 3 days even playing the ship, and I'm just now done with it. And because I don't want to lie to you, get a 10 kill battle where it's exceptionally going well and then say, oh look, I just got 10 kills, it's easy life. No, it's not. This ship has a really hard time. I got an awful amount of up tiers to 6.7 and most of the time even 7.0, and no ship of 6.0 or 6.3 has a particularly good time at this battle rating. That's just naval compression for you in a nutshell. As a pre-dreadnought, the main selling point of the ship are the biggest and heaviest secondaries of any ship in the game. So this is the pre-dreadnought flavor, and this is why I made the comparison to the IJN Setsu, because you could say technically that the Kawachi class was the first real dreadnought class, even before HMS Dreadnought. It's defined, and this is very important, by the same caliber of universal main battery, which technically the Kawachi has, but it has 2 different barrel lengths. So this is getting a little bit into the story of pre-dreadnoughts, and I would love to see more pre-dreadnoughts in the game where they have some meta to fight each other. Then the ship could be really interesting, but when you now have to fight World War II and even paper ships like the Kronstadt, it's just not fun. That always has been a big problem with naval forces, but with 6.0 in this ship, when I played it, it was just immensely frustrating. But now let's go into the basics of the ship so that you get a rough idea what I'm talking about. First, let's start with the armor, and we have a central main belt of 177.8 millimeters, and that is not really sufficient. That's marginally better than belts of the Zara class, the best protected heavy cruiser in the game, and also not even that much better than the Des Moines class. Then we have at the front end and the rear end of the ship a armor strip of 102 millimeters, so 4 inches. So we have a distributed armor scheme, and behind this is a deck plating of 38.1 millimeters, that then narrows down or gets into a turtle back, connecting the main deck with the side plating of 50.8 millimeters. It has a reasonable angle of construction, roughly 55 to 60 degrees, and that helps immensely because technically speaking, if any heavy cruiser shoots at you at any range, well, those 8-inch shells will go right through your armor. I mean, have you ever had a real difficulty detonating a Des Moines in your Hipper class or the Prinz Eugen, even at range? No, I don't think so. So relatively modern 8-inch guns have no real problem fighting here the IJN Kurama, and you really feel this. Even from light cruisers at medium range, their AP can hurt immensely. You have an upper belt where there is the majority of the secondaries of 127 millimeters. And the heavy 8-inch secondaries, which I want to remind you is the main selling point of the ship, which makes it unique so far, is a barbette of 152 millimeters, and same as the side of the turret, and the front of the turret is 203 millimeters. That brings us then to the barbettes of the main turrets, which are really large, and also like the central belt protection 177 millimeters, with the turret faces being 229, and they are also relatively flat. So the ship's armor leaves things to be desired. My main concern with this is that the central section is the best protected, but this central section that is best protected, including some coal bunkers behind the turtleback, is that this does not extend towards the front and the rear magazine. For the front magazine, it's not such a big deal because they are below the waterline, significantly so, but the rear magazine is actually raised slightly above the magazine, so this can be citadeled easily, and if you lose that magazine, if it does not outright destroy the ship, well, you lose 50% of your firepower to one shell. And that then brings us to the firepower department, because you have a long list of various different calibers. You have two twin 12-inch -45 Vickers cannons, 320 rounds between them. You have four twin 20 centimeter -45 Type 41 cannons with 800 rounds between them. Then you have 14 4.7-inch -40 Armstrong cannons with 2,100 rounds. Then you have four 3-inch guns, four 8-centimeter guns, and four 3-pounder guns, and then also 5 18-inch torpedoes. Those torpedoes are in 3 tubes, one going through the rear of the ship and one to each side, with every side torpedo tube having a single reload. Those torpedoes are particularly terrible, low yield, and only 2 kilometers of range, so they are not really worth talking about. And that brings us then to the reload, the penetration values, etc. The main battery has a reload of 30 seconds, and that hurts. When I talk about the problem of 4-gun ships such as the Glorious, or even the other British ship that has only 6 guns, what was its name? It was also a reward. Yeah, the HMS Renown. You just lack the volume. If you then also have to fight ships that do have significantly better armor than you and more guns, etc., you know, you just always fighting an uphill battle if you are shooting each other. So 30-second reload for only 4 guns is hard. Also, the turret rotation speed is terribly slow. Then we have the problem that the stat card is wrong here with the reload regarding the 20-centimeter guns. Because they actually are listed with 30.3 seconds, but in battle they have more like a 15-16 second reload, so that is significantly better than what the stat cards read. But the 4.7-inch guns, of which you have 7 per side, you have a 12-second reload. For 120mm guns, that's also a relatively long reload. Remember, that's the same reload as for the 8-inch guns on the Hipper class. You get a feeling where the problems are. Also, you cannot switch for the 4.7 between HE and AP, so they fire HE alone, and HE just isn't really that effective. And another thing is that there is the various different placements where they are. If they're a casemate or they are standing in the open like a single gun, they have limited elevation. So at range you cannot even use all the secondaries, even though they have the horizontally correct traverse or firing angle ready on target. So that is also frustrating. At closer ranges, there is quite the firework from this pre-dreadnought, but also not that great. And the smaller guns, they somewhat double function as AA, but they're not really that effective. They're mounted on top of the turret, and you lose them less often than the main battery or the secondaries even. The secondaries, and that's really infuriating, you lose them to HE splash because they are slightly raised above the deck, and HE detonating on the deck will splash them under the turrets where there is only a 1 inch or 25.4mm plating, and you lose the entire turret. You have to go through the repair cycle, giving you longer reload if you fire while you're repairing, etc, etc. So this is really nasty, and you therefore cannot ignore anybody shooting at you, even destroyers. So the DPM is significantly lower. In fact, it is only a third of what you get from the SMS Nassau. You know, a third. And another thing is that I wanted to highlight when comparing to the Nassau, one of the main selling points of the Nassau that sets it also universally apart from many other ships is that it has this hexagonal layout of the main battery, which allows you to bring 3 turrets facing forwards, and with a 20-second reload of the main battery of its 11-inch guns, that's still a way to play the ship. Using its distributed armor scheme, etc, etc. And again, you cannot really play that card with the Kurama because it doesn't have as strong armor. The deck armor is too exposed and too thin versus plunging fire going through the bow. And also, while it is possible to bring the 2 forward facing 8-inch heavy secondary turrets to fire together with the 1 frontal facing 12-inch turret to bear on one target, it's an extremely narrow angle. It is really difficult, especially if the target is going on a horizontal course from left to right or right to left. The adjustment is terribly finicky. So this is not a easily to accomplish way of playing compared to the SMS Nassau. So again, not really that amazing. Now let's talk about the ammunition, because this is again interesting. You have for the 305mm guns or the 12-inch guns, HE with 37.8 kilograms of TNT. That's not too bad, especially for that caliber, but it's only HE, so it doesn't really do damage to ship classes from destroyers and up. Maybe it starts some fires, but that's not worth the effort. Then we have the 12-inch APC, and that's actually an APC style shell. It has a TNT equivalent yield of 13.6 kilograms. That's roughly a third compared to the HE, so not too bad at all, especially when you fight cruisers. And the penetration is nearly 500 millimeters at point blank range. At 5,000 meters it drops to 345 millimeters, and at 10 kilometers you have to deal with only 229 millimeters of penetration, and versus angled armor it's obviously even less effective. The problem is also the dispersion. If you have 8 guns shooting shells at the target, like the most dreadnoughts, etc., or HMS Dreadnought herself, then you can get away with that dispersion. But with only 4 guns, it's painful when you perfectly straddle the enemy ship. 2 shells landing in front of it and 2 shells going far. That's just exhausting. And even if you hit, you need to perfectly hit the enemy's ammo rack or magazine the boiler room, etc. And this is where just more guns, even if they have lower penetration values, is just better in War Thunder. But this is where the 203mm secondaries come in. Just like with the main guns, you only have 2 shell types, so no SAP for both calibers. The 200mm, as it is listed, is actually a 203mm caliber, has HE with 63mm of penetration, coming from 11.25 kilograms of explosive TNT mass, which is not bad at all for this caliber. And you have then also the AP with 291mm at point blank range, with a yield of 3.49 kilograms, which is also not too bad. The penetration is roughly 100mm less, even at range, compared to the more modern 8-inch guns from the US 8-inch guns or the German 8-inch guns as a comparison. And it's also an APC type. The second problem that you have with the different calibers that effectively make your main weapons, if you want to count the 8-inch secondaries to your main battery, is that they have different muzzle velocities and they retain the energy differently. The 8-inch gun shells obviously less than the 12-inch guns, and so when you have to lead an enemy ship, you have to account for the different calibers. Shoot the main battery, then adjust according to your own experience, because the game doesn't help you in that aspect, then for the 8-inch guns, and then shoot them. They have a longer travel time, they have a different impact angle, so it's not really that great. While technically speaking, also the IJN Setsu has this issue with the 2 different sets of 12-inch guns. It is significantly less feelable in that aspect and somewhat actually helps you. So there is a bit of a difference, but it's not really that decisive, and actually helps you to hit different portions of the ship if you aim the faster ones, the 50 calibers, just right. So I think that this ship has a lot of problems. It faces opposition that it has no business whatsoever actually having to deal with, should have deal with them. It is too slow despite the 40 kilometers per hour. It's not the slowest, there are slower battleships in the game, but it also doesn't have the volume of fire to take down an enemy ship quickly. Even a light cruiser, if you have a little bit of bad luck and you just try to kill that enemy ship, and you need to hit the ammo rack or the barbettes, the lower part of the barbettes, like on the USS Helena, you can spend all day if you're really unlucky, and that other ship just spams you to death with HE. Your secondaries get knocked out, you get set on fire, you just get spammed until there is nothing left of you, and you die relatively quickly even from shells that just pen you, whereas other ships have the benefit of that their combined armor might be resilient to enemy shell fire at some angles and some distance. You really do not have the luxury. So the TLDR is you have a lack of volume of fire, you have a lack of armor, you have a lack of speed, you have a lack of deck protection, you have a lack of effective AA, you have no torpedoes that are, well, you have no effective torpedoes. The torpedoes that you have are just too few, too short range. This ship has a lot of issues, and I would love that Gaijin would decompress here heavily, because there are so many interesting dreadnought designs from all the main nations that I would love to see in the game. But when you look at this pre-dreadnought, it just has no real business in the game. If I would be in a Des Moines, or if I would be in a Admiral Hipper class, I would prioritize the ship, because the 12-inch guns can be nasty if they hit, but I have a good chance of inflicting extremely heavy damage or outright killing the IJN Kurama when I'm in a somewhat capable heavy cruiser myself and now I'm targeting this. So that is this ship in a nutshell, and I hope that this explanation was not too long. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below. And give this video a like if you did. For you, it's just a click. For me, it means the world. And subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the bell if you really want to be notified. And as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.